Hey everybody, this is Future Chad. Just wanted to give you a quick disclaimer. Jeremiah and I were having some technical difficulties with our audio, and so this episode and part 2 with Armand Rosamilia does not sound ideal. So I just wanted you to be aware. Hope you enjoy the show anyway.
In this episode,
an anthology from '95 is like the best of erotica. And all I really will say is that if that's the best of erotica, erotica sucks.
Welcome. You're listening to PaleoCheeze Podcast, Episode 13, Part 1, with guest Armand Rosamilia.
Welcome back, everybody. My name is Jeremiah Bannister.
And I'm Chad Lutsky.
And you're listening to PaleoCheeze Podcast, part of the Project Entertainment Network. It's the podcast that tosses the film under the old chaise lounge to discuss, psychoanalyze, and every once in a while to laugh at. And Chad, dude, bro, we've had some pretty amazing guests the last couple episodes here, and dude, we have not failed to deliver with this one.
Yes, Mr. Armand Rosamilia. He's an author who's written over 150 stories in the horror, contemporary, and thriller genres. He also has 2 podcasts, the Armcast podcast, in the Mondo Method with Chuck Buda, where they talk writing, publishing, and Armand's Funko obsession. He's also our boss here at Project Entertainment Network, so we have to kiss his butt. Thanks for hanging out with us tonight, man. Appreciate it.
Hey, thanks for inviting me. It's an honor.
He's a real taskmaster. You know what I mean? Yeah, total taskmaster. I mean, he's been totally all over us, man, about the commercial. We feel terrible. He has not at all, man. You should be on our butts about this. Oh.
You know, the funny thing about Armand's name is it's super unique. You know, I share everything with my wife. She's like my biggest cheerleader, so she knows all of these people. I mean, I sometimes have to like, he's the guy that did this, or it's the girl that did this, and, you know, to kind of remind her, because there's so many names, you know, I share stuff with her. But the funny thing is, when I first started like bringing Armand's name into conversation, I always said Armand Rosamilia, because I love saying the whole name. So now it's a running joke in our house. If I forget and I'm just like, oh yeah, so Armand's coming on stage, she'd be like, who? Armand who? And I'm like, oh yeah, Armand Rosamilia.
Which is funny because you are always in my house, me and Shelly. It's always Chad Lutsky. There's no Chad, and I don't even think we know another Chad, but it's still just Chad Lutsky.
I always wanted to be like the you know, like Cher or Madonna, where you just that's all you need, man. It's just the one word.
Or the artist formerly known as Prince.
Yeah.
Like there's only one of those.
I do want to remind people, if they're listening right now, help give us some validation by subscribing or following or liking, etc. And if you really want to make us smile, visit Twitter or YouTube or Instagram, or Facebook, and click on everything that you're supposed to, and get all the platforms, and help spread the word, and it helps us sleep at night and makes us feel loved, you know.
It's our blankie. Every time we get a subscription, you know, like, comment, share, subscribe, it's nice and warm like a blankie. And make sure to check us out, man. Go over to Project Entertainment Network. Go to the .com, man. There's a whole bunch. You know, it kind of blows my mind, Armand, all the time, that whenever I go there, I grab pictures and stuff, you know, whenever we put a commercial spot at the end, a little promo at the end of the show. And I always go in there and I take, you know, pictures from the different podcasts. And I'm always thinking, it is a really diverse cast, for one. I mean, there's a whole bunch of different kinds of shows, right?
And we have over 30 podcasts now. And I'm adding more, too. It's just a matter of trying to find the podcasts that fit. And I'm selfish, so it's got to be podcasts that I actually like.
Is there anything in particular, like a void that you're missing, that you'd love for somebody to reach out that has?
There's a couple. I would love to have a true crime podcast. I think that would be really well. I would also like to have more of a diverse group of hosts as well. And I'm not looking just to say, oh, well, we have to have a specific, you know, thing. Mm-hmm. But I'm hoping that organically they see us and start coming to us, because most of it is word of mouth from you know, you guys, and finding other podcasts that you work with and other people. And, we just keep building it up. And, but, true crime is a big one. We will be adding a baseball one.
Yes, man.
Very, very soon. Actually, I will be working with that one. I am a member of the International Baseball Writers Association. And I mean, you're talking if you know baseball, there's some really big names. I mean, you've seen these guys on MLB Network and ESPN and stuff. And I will be doing interviews with a lot of those people as a segment on that podcast. And we'll bring it into Project Entertainment Network because I think it'll be another great fit.
See, I think that's so cool, man. That was when I was going through, because with every guest, there's a lot of the guests are people that Chad knows, but that I've never met, and I haven't read their books and things like that, which has been really awesome because now I'm buying all these books, and I have a couple people that are actually sending me stuff, and so I really love that, even a signed copy, 2 of them actually, and so really exciting. But when I went into your account there at Amazon, the author account, I was looking at all the different books that you've done, and I saw the State of Horror series, and I thought that was cool, although you're missing Michigan, and it breaks my heart. But you've got, of course, The Horror Writer, which is one of the things that I want to get, The Silver Scream. So I'm super interested in that, but I saw A View from My Seat, and I thought, okay, what is this? Because it stood out, man. I was like, maybe, because you've written so many things, and I'm like, maybe he's got even a book about gardening or something, like something that stands out, but there it is, boom, smack dab. And I said, and I went and I looked at it and I thought, I love that. I'm so pumped up about it. And because, I'm nostalgic about baseball. I haven't watched it as much because we don't have TV anymore, so I still catch it on highlights and stuff like that. I've collected cards, so I have all these different baseball cards and stuff from when I was younger and everything. And I was going through and I was like, I'd love to pick his brain about, what does he think about the historical rap, kind of with Ty Cobb? Does he think that Pete Rose has been out of the Hall of Fame long enough? That kind of stuff. And I said, I'm not gonna push it on this show, but I'm super pumped, man.
You and I will do an entire show on that, and then me and Chad can do an entire show on Cheap Trick, and then we'll be good.
Yeah, it sounds awesome because, man, I'm telling you, I'd love to pick your brain. When I was in journalism school, some of my friends were wanting to get into sports writing, and many of them have. But I remember we went to a Tigers game, and they had us do the stats in real time. We had the printout and everything, and it's laborious. I mean, I can imagine, for people who that's what they love to do. They're there and they like to write down the stats. I had some friends that did that, even just for fun, But mad props, man, to sports writers and the kind of knowledge that goes into it, about ERAs and everything else, that they have this ability to recall and play that game with those numbers, and I love the debates. I love sports radio. So I'm all that to say, man, that really warms my heart, bud. Super pumped.
Yeah, there's a lot of I grew up in a family where, even though I was born in New Jersey, I grew up where my mother and my brother were Yankees fans. I'm a Red Sox fan, and my dad's a Detroit Tigers fan. So it's like, Red Sox, Yankees, Tigers in the 70s. That was brutal. But in the book, we talk about all the different games. So we got to go to see. My dad woke us up literally on a Friday night. Me and my brother and my mom. Let's go. We're driving to Detroit from New Jersey because Mark the Bird Fidrich came off the DL and he's pitching. Yeah. And then we drive to that game. I was lucky enough to be at the Pine Tar game, if you know anything about baseball, the George Brett.
Where the bat broke?
We were right, and they
found out.
Pine Tar. Yeah.
That's sad too,
Yeah. I detail a bunch of the different special games and stuff, and I took a road trip with my dad a few years ago, and we hit 8 or 9 games and stuff. So it's not only about the Jacksonville Jumbo Shrimp in the book, it's also about growing up, a baseball family. And I get to interview my mom and dad in the book, which was cool. And they're still arguing,
I won't say much more about this, but I wanted to, for one, I think it's cool that you're a Jersey boy, man. I spent some time, I was in the Navy in Connecticut, and then I moved to New Jersey, and I worked in the state capitol there in Trenton, and that's where we lived. And so it was a really cool experience living in Jersey, much different from where I live now. But, you mentioned the whole Yankees and Red Sox thing. it's funny because when I was a kid, man, I had like my parents would buy me the whole set of like tops. You know what I mean?
Right.
And so I'd have the complete set for numerous different years. And at the time, I was so young, and my dad didn't like watching baseball. He said it was too slow, and yet he watched golf. So I always thought that was hilarious. You know what I mean? I love golf too, but I'm like, kind of. So the thing is that I based my idea off of who I liked, really off of jerseys. And so when I was a kid, I'd see their jerseys, and I'd be like, oh man, that looks so cool. Or I'd see a really cool player. I used to play this game where I'd lay the cards out and I'd flick them. So I wasn't even taking good care of the cards.
Yeah, we all did that. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, dude, I had Roger Clemens' rookie card just crinkled up like crazy. I'm thinking, and I look back now and it's so iconic, this picture. And so I'm like, oh my gosh, man, I'd be worth a fortune. But I loved the Red Sox, the Yankees, and the Tigers. And I didn't know of the rivalry. I didn't know. So then when I got old enough where they'd be like, what are your favorite teams? And I would say my favorite teams. People were like, you're lying. Like, no, I do. And then I figured it out. And if I had to pick, I'd go with the Yankees. I've been to the stadium a couple different times. Loved it. Was there in my Navy uniform and stuff during Fleet Week. And so, but anyway, all of that, dude, I'm just really cool to be able to talk to you about baseball.
It's weird hearing Armand dropped a couple of names that really, I haven't really thought about baseball for a long time. I grew up, I went to some Tiger games with my dad, and he was so it's one of those things where it was like, I liked baseball because my dad liked baseball.
Right.
But it wasn't something I sat around and watched. I did play for 6 years, and one of my first mitts was a George Brett mitt, and I just remember that. Also, I had a Fidrich poster in my bedroom that I completely forgot I had in the late 70s until you just said that.
Yeah.
So yeah, just some of those early, Gibson,
Kurt Gibson, bro.
Kurt Gibson
with the arms up.
Alan Trammell.
Oh
and,
yes, dude. Yes.
Old schoolers. Yeah, I got to see him play. But again, sports was always one of those things where I would try it. And like I said, I played baseball for 6 years, and it always felt like one of those things where I never belonged because I was into like heavier music or horror movies and, monsters and, stuff that, where everybody else was like this jock and I just didn't. And then once I started growing my hair out, things started to get even weirder where it was like I didn't feel like I belonged at all. So I ended up just quitting any kind of sport. So it felt awkward, but
yeah, I mean, we played, I grew up on a dead end street, so we had tons of kids that played. I never played any organized or anything. What's great now is my wife is totally into it, and she grew up in, down here, Jacksonville, Florida, and her family was not into sports at all. And when we started going to the Jacksonville games and she started, I would tell her, because I like a guy would come up from the other team, and I'd be like, all right, here's the number 2 prospect for the Angels. I knew all, I knew all that, and she got excited for that. And we worked with the Booster Club, helping the players when they went on the road, because these guys they're making about $1,000, $1,200 a month, and only for like 6 months. Mm-hmm. So we started packing snack bags and drinks and stuff for when they went on the road. And last year I took over as the Booster Club president. And so we would throw picnics for the players. And we had, at any given time, we had 3 players that were living with us, which is really neat. So a couple of the guys have gone on to the major leagues now. They're playing on other teams, but it's neat that I get to send a guy, Kyle Keller's got signed and traded to the Angels, and he's one of their relievers, and we get to send him a message, or he sends us a message on our birthdays, and we still keep in touch. And it's just really neat to get to know these guys when they're that young, and as they move up and stuff. It's great.
What turned Shelly onto baseball then? Was it like the social things that she started to do and the being able to participate things, or was it the actual game?
At first it was just the social part, and it was the history. It was me explaining to her the players or who's what, and actually the game. She had no idea what was going on the field, and I would explain to her the nuances and the hit and runs and the steals and pitch outs and hitting the cutoff man. I mean, all this the little stuff that you don't really pay attention to. So, I mean, she's to the point now where she's like, he's got to throw a fastball. You know,
yeah.
But she really gets it, which is really neat. So, and she enjoys. I mean, she's come to me and said, you know what? We've never been to Birmingham. Let's go to see the team when they're away, and the guys will leave us tickets, and we drive to Birmingham, and we'll see a couple of games, and then we'll drive to Mississippi, and we'll see a couple of games. We go to Biloxi. I mean, we've been to about half the stadiums in the Southern League, and we would have been doing. We had them all planned out this year, but then with everything going on, we couldn't go. Which and you know, when they announced that, you know, they weren't going to have a minor league season, a lot of those guys texted us or sent us messages, and just to see if we were all right, and we talked to them. So it's really neat. It's like an extended kids. They're all, you know, my oldest is 24, and I got a 23-year-old and a 19-year-old. So they're all in that range. So it's just kind of like our extended kids.
You know,
awesome.
There's very few things I think that someone can really pride themselves on to having been born and raised in Battle Creek, Michigan. But the Stan Musial World Series, I mean, that was just such a cool thing, man. And the kind of players that come through, you know, and it wasn't just the players that you see when they're young and they're going to make their way up, you know what I mean? But also the players that have been there for a long time and were really good, but just not good enough, right? And that they get to their prime and they're kind of at that place, and then they're out, right? But the way that the league treated them, and the way that they were paraded, you know, as a guy, I forget his first, it might be Rick Beck Sr. He was there, and they, you know, people taking their caps off and stuff, you know, for him, because this is his last time. And they had the Whitecaps. I worked for the Battle Creek Bombers for a while. So I worked for them, and I did that strictly so that I could go to the complex, because it wasn't just one stadium. You'd have multiple different baseball diamonds, and so you could go. And let's say, you know, you're working, you know, making a handful of bucks, giving tickets out and stuff like that, playing some games, but then you get to watch all the games. And if, you know, if it's kind of a game that's not going too hot, you can walk around the complex, and there might be, you know, 8-10 different diamonds with games going on, ranging from traveling teams, high school teams, fast pitch softball, church league softball. And it was just so cool, man, to be able to go, and you can, you know, navigate your way through and go to any of them, and just sit there in the stands and just watch it, buy a dog, man, and just enjoy your day. And I'll tell you, you know, we love going to the Whitecaps game, man. We love it. The West Michigan Whitecaps are a really great team, amazing stadium. They always have really cool events there, even good bands that they come, you know, and do highlight stuff and everything.
My wife's actually at the stadium right now in Jacksonville playing bingo. Her and my daughter went up to play bingo tonight. They don't have baseball, so we're going next week. We're going to Savannah, the Savannah Bananas, which is an indie team, and they actually have a game. They actually started the season, so wow. It's an all-you-can-eat ticket for like $18. You got to wear your mask, and it's social distancing. They only sold out. They can only sell like 25% of the seating, and I just got lucky and snagged us a couple of tickets. I've been trying to get tickets for years. So we're actually going to go see baseball this year. So I'm very excited about that. My wife's excited about going to Savannah, and I'm excited. I'm like, yeah, we'll wander around. We've been there before, but I want to go see baseball.
Now, speaking of baseball, but horror, Armand, I know you're not a big Stephen King fan, but I would encourage you to read Blockade Billy. I think that you would probably like it.
See, I've read The Girl Who Loved Tom Gordon. I read that one because it's about the Red Sox. This is a baseball horror novella. Okay. It's I didn't like it, but I think that you would really like it a lot. I mean, it's 100% about baseball, about a player in particular who is doing some crazy stuff out on the field. But I will definitely check that out. Always looking for new stuff to read. Do you have anything new coming out? I know you're always writing something. Anything like new on the horizon? Frozen in Ice just came out from Severed Press. It's so new I don't even have a print version of it yet. That came out a couple weeks ago, and it's kind of it's basically my homage to The Thing. And that's pretty. It's an alien crashes on Antarctica, and fun ensues. I don't know if you know who Lee Mcgeorge is.
He lives in the UK, and he has written a bunch of books, but he's written a couple books that are he can't sell because he hasn't been given permission or whatever. So all of his or a couple of these books, they'll just say promo use only, not for sale. But he wrote a really cool. You can see it.
Oh, yeah.
To the thing. But,
okay, I know exactly who that is. Yeah.
Yeah, and he wrote a Videodrome one too. They're both great. And
dude, I haven't seen The Thing.
Yeah, next week, dude. That's the one.
Is it really?
You've never seen that?
Bro, you don't even know. You don't.
We might as well spill it right now.
We might as well spill it, dude. Just lay it out there, Chad. Just all the way.
When we were doing our episode, I've known Jeremiah for 25, 26 years. And I found out recently, mainly during and shortly thereafter, our episode with Jeremy Wagner, where Jeremiah confessed that he had never seen Jeremy's favorite movie, Jaws. And Jeremy was a little freaked out by that. So Jeremiah vowed to watch it, and he did. And he put a little reaction video up on the PaleoCheeze channel. And soon after, I jokingly said something on Twitter. I think I had mentioned something to Sadie Hartman, Mother Horror, because she's not a huge fan of horror film, but she is. They freak her out. You know, if she can read a scary book, it doesn't do much for her, but something about visceral things she's watching, she has a different type of reaction, I guess. But I said something about how, because I think she had watched The Thing, and I said, well, next up is Evil Dead, and Jeremiah had mentioned that he had never seen that, and I was just like, dude, really? Because all of my friends have seen Evil Dead. I mean, it's been in my top 5 forever. I know the guy who did the special effects. He lives 15 minutes away. I've had him over to my house a couple times and for dinner and whatnot to talk Evil Dead. And so, and I'm not the only one in this town that has, knows this guy and just, I mean, we're from Michigan, part of it was filmed in a couple different places in Michigan. One of the places like right next door to us, right next door to Battle Creek. And so it's like, how can you live in Michigan and not, the guys went to Michigan State, How
can you live on this planet and not? Forget Michigan.
At that point, I started thinking, and actually, I think I already mentioned it to you, Armand. We were going to go with a different direction where there's a couple reasons why Jeremiah hasn't seen these. One was his upbringing. It was just not something that they, I don't know if it was prohibited as much as it was just not there.
I think that they had kind of the moment your son did with Hereditary. They saw Fortress and said, there's just nothing scarier than that movie. And so, no, we're never watching any other horror movie again. No, we just didn't watch it. Like, I mean, there's, as I said, like, I think it's called The Fortress or Fortress. And when people look it up, they're going to probably find the wrong one. It's like a 1970s or early 80s film. These guys in Santa Claus masks and cat and dog masks. They surround a school up in a mountain, and then they put the kids in this kind of cave and cover it up. And it's really messed up, man. But I had nightmares from that. I had nightmares from that. What is it, man? Not Left Behind. The Close Enough. The Thief in the Night series. Yeah, I mean, this stuff just scared the crap out of me. You know what I mean?
We're going to start having a Fortress segment for each episode. Talk about the Fortress again.
Yeah, Fortress, dude. It's every show. I mean, it stands out forever. But when I got older, I did watch some, and it's funny, man, because I'd never seen Evil Dead. I'd never seen Jaws, but I had seen Dead Alive with you.
Yeah,
you showed me, and it's kind of like the mother of all nastiness, dude. I have seen it, and yet I haven't seen these other ones. But the other reason, dude, is I'm just straight up scared of a lot of stuff. I mean, for realsies. Like, I'm whether it's swimming in deep water where you can't touch the bottom, or if you're in a lake and your feet do touch the bottom. When I was a kid, I was scared of poisonous turtles. A friend told me they were real, and I bought into it, or that there were like northern pike with piranha teeth in the freshwater lake that were going to get me. Or my favorite one, that if I was swimming in a pool and it was dark and there was shade in that area, that maybe Jaws could come up through, the filter at the bottom or whatever. But those were legit things that I was for real afraid of. Tornadoes, lightning. I hate it. It's unpredictable. Darkness. So there's so many things. Spiders. You name it, man. And then recently, Chad's wife talking about an ant in her ear, and man, I've been like freaking out ever since.
Yeah, that
man,
would freak me out. Yeah.
Anytime I have a little bit of weird feeling, I'm like, oh no, bro. So the idea of just diving into horror films for me is cuckoo pants. I'm like, oh no. Like, oh, the idea of that, oh, I don't think so. I'll pass. I'll go watch Lollipop Kids over here. And so that's just been the way it's been.
So yeah, for that reason, and because, I mean, so much of my circle and the people that we hang out with, the people that we have on the show, you know, they're originally it was like, well, whatever genre you want to pick, because I just love film, period. So we thought we'd steer it toward horror. So this will be officially the, with the exception of some outlier episodes where we might dig into other stuff, but this is officially the last episode where we are, you know, very consciously trying to have like this cycle where we're doing different types. As a matter of fact, we even dropped Florida Project, the idea of doing that episode, which is one that I was really wanting to do. So we're finishing off on this, you know, PaleoCheeze 1.0 with a type of movie that we haven't discussed, documentary. But before we do, Jeremiah, have you been reading? I know you're reading Paradise Sky still. You've been digging into that some more?
Well, I was, but then I realized that I actually started a book before Paradise Sky. And because I, you know, when people come on, I try, if I'm able to. And in that particular episode, you were insistent. You know, you got to read this, man. You've never read Lansdale at all. You got to do this. There's a couple things you got to watch and some you got to read. So I got, you know, let's say 12, 13 chapters in to Paradise Sky. But I stopped reading a book so that I could read Paradise Sky. And the book that I stopped reading was Halo of Flies by Chad Lutzke. So I went back and I bought it, man. I put some loop into that, man. And I found the Leprechaun. And I bought that book. Super fancy, awesome hardcover book, limited edition, signed by my man. You know, super awesome art, original, you know, it's unique to that. And it's got 4 of the novellas that he's written. During the Sheets, Skullface Boy, Wallflower, and Foster Home and Flies. I've read Foster Home already, and Foster and Flies. So I've read that. And I've read Skullface Boy, but I had not read the other 2. And I gobbled them buggers up, man, this week and absolutely loved it. Okay. So I was super pumped about that. But beyond that, I haven't read anything new for 2 reasons. Number one, I actually went out and I bought some more books. I bought Bird Box, okay, which I'd been wanting to ever since we interviewed Mallerman, man. Like I've wanted to do that. And I'm like, man, it's been like, I think it was episode 2. And so it's been a minute. So I finally got that. I got Drive-In 1 through 3 by Lansdale. And then I got the My Name is Legion, the book from the desk in the movie Phantasm. Because I saw the book, you know, in the movie, and I was like, what is that book? You know, I thought it was a cool looking cover to it. So I looked it up and I was like, bro, I think I'd read that thing. But the other reason why I haven't read anything is because you actually advised me. And I take your word on this, man. I believe you. That, you know, because I'm writing this book, man. I'm coming down to the wire on this book. I'm super pumped. But I asked you some questions, man, about showing, not telling, right? About when writing. And asked you a couple other questions as well. And you told me, you said, look, man, emphatically, in fact, you said, you need to put down every other book you're reading all the way. And you need to read exclusively, just read one book. And it's On Writing by Stephen King. And just do it. Just get it and read it. And so we bought it. So it's coming. Now I need to get the digital copy because I want to be able to read it before it gets here. But that's the reason why. So I don't want to start anything because I only finished your book a couple days ago. And they're both amazing, by the way. I won't go into great detail here. Maybe I can do something on my website about Chad's books. But they're amazing, as always. And so that's what I've been reading, man. What have you been reading, Chad?
A lot of the same old stuff. I've been mixing it up with a couple different things. I got some things that were sent to me to Blurb. So I've been trying to slowly make some time for that. But yesterday I read my very first erotica short story, with the exception of with the exception of reading some Penthouse Forum when I was a child. I have never read erotica, and I am constantly toying around with the idea of exploring, of writing under a pseudonym and exploring other genres. And there are certain things that I just know right away that I could write.
That you could like toy around and experiment with.
Yes. But I wanted to see kind of like, well, how good are these? What is there really an engaging story or whatever? So when my biological father passed away, I got all these books, and in them was an anthology from '95. It was like the best of erotica. And all I really will say is that if that's the best of erotica, erotica sucks. The story was. It was no good. I was very bored. It was. I'm going to read another story. I could definitely write erotica better than that. So that's really the only thing new that I guess maybe I've pulled the trigger on. So what about yourself, Armand?
I'm about. I think I'm book 7 or book 8 in the Dan Padavona Scarlet Bell series, this crime thriller series. Absolutely love his stuff. Pretty much anything, and especially with the switch now to more thriller stuff, I'm really digging his stuff. And I read a lot of I watch a lot of documentaries. I also read a ton of nonfiction. I just read a book about Action Park, which was up in New Jersey, a amusement park up in New Jersey that as kids we went to, and they had so many lawsuits. It was just put together. I mean, it was called, they would call it Action Lawsuit Park. And the book is really funny. It's from one of the kids. His dad owned the park for many years, and all the crazy things that they would do in the park, and it was great. So, and I read that, and my wife at one point she's like, "Why are you laughing?" And I'm like, "Because I remember the huge water slide, and the women would come down so fast they would lose their tops or their bottoms. And as a teenager, that was the greatest thing ever to stand there. I'm like, I think I saw my first pair of boobs, at Action Park. So there's just a lot of, I've read a lot of stuff like that. And I'll read biographies, even stuff that I don't necessarily, I'm necessarily not a huge fan of. I love music biographies. I just read Tom Petty, his biography. I read Freddie Mercury. I read another Freddie Mercury one. I've read probably like 2 or 3 Johnny Cash ones in the last couple months. So I like those. And I have a stack of writing books. So obviously I read On Writing years ago, but I'll read any genre, like how to write erotica, how to write a romance, how to write children's books. I actually have 3 books coming in the mail about Westerns, how to write Westerns or Western slang or whatever. So I try to expand and write in as many genres as possible. And I like to read those books because you're always getting ideas, and not necessarily maybe for that book. I might read that Western thing and I might go, wait, this might work in a horror book. You kind of mix it around and stuff. And it's inspirational for me. I mean, any of those stories to read that stuff inspire me. It's the same with reading, a book about, a band that maybe I'm not even a fan of, but you go, wow, look at this journey of this musician or this, a pro wrestler, or it could be anybody. I mean, it's just entertaining. To me, those are always fun, and it always kind of gets the creative juices flowing after I read something like that.
There's definitely something to be said about exploring other genres to pull away from things, because when you think about a lot of the most innovative stuff, whether it be music or film, a lot of these people who are almost like pioneers or just really standing out in their field, they didn't start with the genre that they created or excelled in. Like I know Sam Raimi, first movie was Evil Dead, but he had done a whole bunch. I mean, he was a big Three Stooges fan. He liked comedies. And when I mentioned earlier about Tom Sullivan coming over a couple times from Evil Dead, and he brought over all those old movies that him and Bruce used to make, and they were just little black and white short films, like slapstick comedy type stuff. Mm-hmm. And he makes a horror film that is one of the most popular films ever made. Black Sabbath created their whole genre, and they weren't listening to metal and stuff like that. They were listening to jazz and blues and stuff. I mean, there's Black Flag's another band that they weren't listening to really punk rock. It was just like, these different elements and then you form this thing that's brand new and fresh. And I think what's his name, Ari Aster or whatever, the guy from Hereditary Summer. I think he's kind of done the same thing. I don't know that horror is necessarily his thing, but you can take it as a different approach. Back to Black Sabbath being a good example. Once they kind of already found their sound and started doing their things, their later albums sound like another band trying to sound like them.
Right.
So it's like they lost that thing, and now it's like, what do we sound? Oh yeah, that's right, we're heavy metal, so let's sound like a heavy metal band. And that's all they did was sound like a heavy metal band. There was no more like cool, weird psychedelic ballads and other strange experimental things going on, or the riffs weren't quite as doomy and creative, and they just sounded more like what other people were trying to sound like. So you can lose that too. But yeah, that's great that every writer or creator should be digging into all kinds of genres. It's good to be diverse like that. The wife and I just finished a couple weeks ago. We finished Ozark and Better Call Saul, and so we were looking. And then before that, we finished the second season of Dead to Me. All three of those shows super good, and I've got this thing with my wife where it's like I'm trying to get her to watch The Sopranos, but she won't do it. I don't like that mob stuff, and I keep reminding her there have been countless shows that I don't force her to watch, but I would egg her on, and I was like, come on, watch this with me, and you're gonna like it, because she gets real closed-minded sometimes, and then next thing you know, it's her favorite show ever. Way back in the day, I did it with NYPD Blue, where that whole shaky cam, or that unsteady cam thing was brand new. And she's like, how can you watch this show? It's making me sick. And I was like, I don't know, it's different. It kind of makes it look realistic. And then she would catch an episode or so, and then we just ended up watching it all together. Same with The Shield, and then some other shows. But I like to remind her so many times where I would watch something, and I know when to point her towards something and when not. Like, I'm not going to say, hey, I think you'd like, or I love Twin Peaks, go watch Twin Peaks. She's not going to like that, man. It's just too out there for her. But The Sopranos has been an ongoing battle for years, because I saw the whole thing, years ago, and I'd like to rewatch it. So I've been trying to get her to watch it, man, and she's just not interested in. I don't know how to. We've got this thing where it's like a 3 or 4 episode rule, where we're watching something new, and then it's like, if you just got done watching, like, let's say, I don't know, Dexter, and you're just like, or Breaking Bad, and you're just like, that was phenomenal, it was one of my favorite shows ever. Whatever you start next is probably going to suffer that first episode or two, because you miss these other characters, you miss this other show, and now this show has some shoes to fill. You've got characters you're not familiar with yet, and so you need to, give it some time. So if we're on the fence by the 3rd episode, and we're quite not sure, then we'll go to the 4th, and after the 4th, you usually fall right in. But she's like, she's not allowing that rule for Sopranos. I'm bummed out about it.
You got to kind of ease her into it. You got to explain to her that The Sopranos is it's a family. It's not about the mob necessarily. It's about him being a father and her being a wife and the kids and the dynamic. And it's a family drama that happens to have mob stuff in it.
Yeah.
We do that too with the three episodes and we're done. But we've been binge watching stuff like crazy lately. Bosch, which we had never watched. It's Michael Connelly. So I've read most of the books. I mean, there's like 24, 25 in that series.
Oh.
And it was interesting because he wrote it. He started them years ago. So it's, he's a Vietnam vet in that. So obviously they updated it. We watched that, and my wife, we both loved that one. And we watched all the Harlan Coben Netflix ones. We just watched The Woods the other night. That was pretty good. And we watched we watched Ozark. We loved Ozark, and we watched. We had never seen The Wire, and so we binge watched all 6 seasons of that, and really loved that. And it's funny watching a show like that came on first season 2002, because you're like, oh, that's the guy from Hap and Leonard. That's the guy from That's the guy. You start you start pointing and going, where are all these people you haven't seen in a long time. So, but we watch. So my wife watches Investigation Discovery Channel. It's on every night, every show. She loves seeing people killing other people. And so with, like, that's literally what we'll watch. But now we've started to like binge watch stuff as well. So, and I'll sneak in, like, not now, but I used to sneak in like MLB Network. If a game was on, she'd let me watch game and stuff like that. But she won't watch documentaries with me, and she won't watch anything sci-fi. She hates UFOs. So she's like Project Blue Book. She's like, you're on your own on that. Ancient Aliens, you're on your own. Like, she'll watch Expedition Unknown. She'll watch that with me only because she likes Josh Gates. She likes the guy who does. She likes to see his goofy stuff. And then, like, we'll watch stuff like Impractical Jokers. You know, because my thing is, I don't want to go to bed after watching an Investigation Discovery show. Yeah. Like, I'll go to bed by midnight. I don't want to watch somebody killing their husband or their wife.
Yeah.
You know, and I go to bed like I'm in a mood then, you know?
Yeah.
And I'll have weird dreams, and I'm like, let's watch something fun for like the last hour. Then you can watch
Family Guy.
Yeah.
So we watch Impractical Jokers and like stuff like that. And she's always like, oh my God, like these guys are, and I'm like, that's us growing up. I mean, they're Staten Island guys, but that's like Jersey. Us, you know, busting each other's chops growing up. So I always like to have that. When we first started dating, she was very worried because she doesn't watch horror movies at all. And she grew up kind of like Jeremiah, where they didn't have it in the house. Like her dad's a minister, so they didn't have any of that to begin with. But it was all John Wayne or like Elvis movies. You know, like they were like the 70s and the 80s just gone. You know, like nothing existed in those 20 years. Mm-hmm. So for her, like when you bring up Jaws or you bring up Alien or you bring up, you know, she had never seen The Princess Bride, and I'm like, are you serious? We got to watch The Princess Bride. Like so many movies that she's never seen, but she's like, I won't watch sci-fi and I won't watch horror. So when we started dating, she was like, oh, I just got to let you know, I will not go to a horror movie with you. I won't watch it, you know, any of that. And I'm like, I haven't watched a horror movie in like 10 years. I said, I'm going to be honest. If you give me a Jennifer Aniston romantic comedy, I'm all in. I said, you want to put Beaches on? I'm in. But I'm not watching Human Centipede and all that stuff like that.
Oh.
You know?
Of all the ones to pick, man, you picked that one. It's hilarious you mentioned Princess Bride because I just watched that 2 nights ago with my kids. And they'd never seen it. And my 13-year-old, you know, he kind of does, you know, the same thing Chad was saying his wife does, where he's like, oh, well, that's stupid. Now, I always remind him, I'm like, bro, name the last movie that I showed you that when you were done, you went, oh, man, that wasn't worth it. Because he doesn't have any. So far, I'm lucky so far. But we watched Princess Bride. Dude was the only guy up with me the whole night long. Everybody else just fell asleep. Oh, no, not him. And at the end, he was like, that was a really great movie. I'm like, yes, I know it is. And I understand the whole thing about at night watching stuff. It isn't scary, you know, or isn't messed up, you know, because I enjoy watching messed up stuff too. We'll watch at night, you know. This week we watched Greg the Bunny, right? I don't know if you guys remember that show.
I remember that. Yeah.
Eugene Levy and stuff like that. And we used to watch that show just for laughs. I don't know if you know what that is. I don't know where they recorded that. Somewhere, I think, in Europe, because they don't actually, you don't hear them. You just hear the gag reel, you know, laughing, the laugh track and everything, but it's always pranks and kind of really funny ones. This week we watched 2 things that were a little bit different. We watched Daddy's Home, and I didn't want to watch it. That was one that I was like, oh, you know, I don't know if I really want to watch that. It's Will Ferrell and Wahlberg and John Cena's in it and stuff.
Oh, I remember that, yeah.
Yeah, but I watched it, and dude, I gotta admit, man, now the second one I can't vouch for. I watched that, and it had funny parts, but it wasn't. The first one was just, in my opinion, superior. You know, it was at least much better. But that was actually kind of a pleasant surprise, man. I chuckled a lot more than I thought I would, you know, watching that movie, and I should have known better, I guess. But it was kind of fun. And then we were going through different shows that had cool cars, and I ended up stumbling on Dukes of Hazzard, and I watched an episode of that. I hadn't seen.
That's ironic.
I know. I hadn't seen anything with the Dukes of Hazzard, man, since I was like 10. I think I saw it like, I'd be at my grandma's house watching Murder, She Wrote and flipping through the channels, and all of a sudden the Dukes are on somewhere, and but I saw it and I said, oh man, look at those guys, never meaning no harm, and so we watched that. But yeah, so it's been a different week, because normally, and one more thing, my kids, man, I told you, that some movies, I said before on the show, there's some movies that we talk about that have scenes in them that would be inappropriate for children, right? On a sexual scale, right? And I didn't know this, but IMDb actually has a list of non-sexual horror movies. I didn't know that. And so now I do, and it has a nice list of them. It's like, oh, so there we go. And they replaced that with like extreme terror. So I'm like, oh my gosh, like that's pretty scary for kids. But Phantasm. And I said, I'm skipping over the scenes. There was 2 of them, that show some skin. And I knew right where they were, flipped over that, and the kids watched it, and it didn't freak them out at all. There was suspense. But they loved the characters. They thought it was super. The car, that's what got us started on it, was that car, man. The Cuda. Man, that's the most badass car, dude, ever. And they loved it. They loved the bad guy, the little finger with the yellow blood and stuff. And they just, even the scene, they knew it was fake. It was funny because the one scene that's like really, lots of blood and stuff. And I can imagine some puritanical folks being like, hey, there's that scene in there with this. And it's like, dude, my kids are like, oh, that's pretty fake. I think they used a hose for that. I said they did actually use a hose. But they thought it was awesome, all the different stuff. And when they were done, the one that didn't want to watch it, Ambrose, he was like, are there more of those ones? Every time, man, every time. So that's been my week of watching.
Was he like, Dad, how come I can't drive and drink beer?
Yes, well, because he was, well, I don't know how old he was in the movie. 12. 12 years old. Yeah. So like 12 years old or 13 or something like that. He's fixing cars dangerously, right? I mean, that's like a perfect example of how not to put a car up on a jack. But they, the driving the car, they were like, that'd be like Athanasius driving the car. And I'm thinking, yeah, but I don't think Athan could touch the pedal, man. He's like, it was pretty little. He'd be playing one of those little guys in the costumes in the movie, and drinking beer. They were like, was that legal back then? I was like, I don't know. But they loved the end too. The idea that it was a dream. And they even figured it out a little bit, thinking this is because, this is like the dream of somebody who's going through a hard time because they lost family members. And that this is telling that story. And I'm like, you guys are pretty smart. You guys should maybe have a show on Project Entertainment Network. And I'm like, you gotta have your own podcast or something. But it was really cool to watch that because it's not super scary. But it has iconic people, and they're like, man, the tall man, whoa. And so now it was a cool deal, man. So that's been my week, dude.
Well, yeah, but have they seen Rocky? And because that's a dangerous show to watch when you're a kid. It could take over your whole life.
Oh my gosh, that's an understatement, bro. This is like another level, dude. The movie we're talking about here is a whole nother level, man.
Let's get into it, man.
All right, dude, let's do this.
Let's do this.